Hey everybody. So to supplement our discussion of federalism, I've asked our teaching assistant Megan to provide us with some additional information about a really great example of an issue that involves state versus federal level kind of decision making. And especially interesting to this example is Megan's discussion of how local citizens were actually really important in this process as well. So pay close attention to this video, and I think you're going to get a really great appreciation for federalism and some stuff about civic participation as well. So without further ado, take it away, Megan.
Hello, Poly 100. For those of you I have not been able to meet yet, my name is Megan and I'm going to be your teaching assistant this fall. It was really great to get to meet a lot of you 2 weeks ago now during that constitutional convention when you were in groups deciding the fate of Genovia. Now this week, week 3, you've shifted gears and you're talking about federalism and separation of powers. But you may have noticed at the end of chapter 3 there was a very, very brief section on collective action. So what I'm hoping to do is spend the next few minutes talking about collective action. The best place for us to start is to think of a working definition. The best way to envision collective action is when groups of people, groups of organizations realize they are better off if they come together, convene, and collaborate to solve a policy or a community issue. They realize there's often this unspoken understanding that the consequences would be far worse if they did not come together. So I want to spend today just talking very briefly about the idea of collective action and applying it to a Baltimore City issue. Now, you may be familiar with this idea of railroad tank cars carrying oil throughout the country. And around 2014, the North Dakota pipeline really brought an oil boom to the country. And as a port city, Baltimore became an attractive place for oil companies to want to use for storage and shipping. So in 2014, we ran into this issue where a Texas-based pipeline company was trying to build an oil storage and shipping facility in Curtis Bay. That is a neighborhood in the south of Baltimore City. And you may ask, what's the issue here? Well, the issue was there would be around 9 million barrels of oil coming through the backyards of Baltimoreans every year. And to make matters worse, this crude oil, had been deemed as flammable as gasoline. And we are all probably familiar with the most horrific and terrifying stories of trains derailing and causing fires, killing so many people, leading to serious environmental disasters. And so we wanted to prevent this. And to put it into perspective, the enormous impact a train derailment might have on Baltimore City, experts came up with this blast zone. You can see here, these trains carrying this volatile crude oil will be coming through the backyards of Baltimoreans. Over 165,000 people would be impacted if a train derailed at any point during that travel. You see that red line is the potential oil train blast zone. So over a third of Baltimore City's population could have been affected, in addition to the waterways, the already fragile Chesapeake Bay, the wildlife habitats. There was an enormous disaster impact these trains could have brought to the city, to its environment, and to its residents. All right, the most distressing part of all of this was that nobody knew exactly how much was coming through the city. The Maryland Department of Environment had signed a non-disclosure act with the railroad companies, CSX, for example, that they would not publicly make available the oil train shipments data. Nobody knew how much was coming through the backyards, but they could see those trains with the flammable sign on the tank cars. All right, so what exactly happened? When we are thinking about the U.S. railway system and as it crosses state lines, it becomes a federal issue. So what could local government, local organizations actually do about this? Well, over 3 years, beginning in 2014, an enormous group of local community organizations, environmental organizations, began coming together, organizing town halls, protest, community meetings. Those is just a list on the screen of some of the organizations, very well-known ones, who came together. And they realized that if they were going to come together, they'd be able to exert enough political pressure to really begin to change the minds of the Baltimore City Council. The Baltimore City Council has purview over zoning, the way local land is used. So harking back to our readings about federalism, though the U.S. railway system, as it crosses state borders, becomes a federal issue, zoning is a local issue, often goes unnoticed. But it's where the rubber meets the road for this story. All these groups were coming together, making this issue very visible to the public. And after a few years, by 2017, the Baltimore City Council decided to pass a climate resolution. It was just a very vague set of statements, certainly reassuring the value that they wanted to protect their citizens from the effects of climate change. But these groups, such as the ones listed before, they knew this wasn't enough. They needed something more substantial from the Baltimore City Council to really stop oil trains from coming through their backyards. So a year later, by 2018, the Baltimore City passed the Crude Oil Terminal Prohibition Bill. Mayor Pugh signed it into law just a few weeks later. They were able to zone the land to ban the construction of new and the expansion of the existing 2 crude oil terminals that were in Baltimore City. Certainly, by many measures, a victory for all of these organizations that we had just seen, who had come together over the years, worked and convened collaboratively to stop this danger from impacting city residents, right? So it's a positive end to this story. Now, I want you to take a moment and think about your life. Have you been involved in a collective action effort like this? Are there possibly issues in your own community? Or maybe if you've been at UMBC for a while now, are you familiar with issues at UMBC where the power of bringing together all these different stakeholders, like environmental organizations, community groups, Baltimore City Council people, to work together with stakeholders to make a serious positive impact on your community? I hope you take time to think about that in the next few days and the next few weeks, about the immense political power we have when we all come together as residents of our community. And if you're interested in learning more about this, certainly feel free to visit these sources. Citation is feminist memory, and as students, as scholars of political science, we owe it to always cite our sources. And I hope this has been enjoyable for you all. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And I hope you take the time to think about what you can do to make a difference, what you can do to bring together people in your community and solve an issue. Maybe not on this scale, but make the lives of others around you better. Until next week, Poly 100, take care.